Hi, my name is Antonis and I'm the painter of this video. Today you will see me painting a study on Raphael, the famous Italian artist of the Renaissance, and I will study a painting of Virgin Mary that he has painted and try to see if I can unlock some of his secrets of his technique and see what I can learn out of this study. I hope that you all are well, you are healthy, creative, and spend some time in your studio. Now, if you want to see the full video painted in real time from the first stages of this study till the end, you can find a video on my Patreon page, and the description is below. The link is on the description below. Here you will see me painting the highlights, the final stage of the flesh here, and I'll try to explain this process as much as I can. Now for this study I'm using eggtempera as my medium, and the painting of Raphael has been painted with eggtempera and oil. I believe that the final stages of the original painting have been painted with oil as his medium. Here I decided to just proceed and continue and finishing this painting with eggtempera and not and skipping the oil use. So the first thing that I've done is, of course, applying a mid-tone base color on the flesh areas. The Byzantine, this is something the Byzantine iconographers used as a technique to paint flesh, and Italian masters took this tradition, and of course they developed it and enriched it somehow. So I covered the whole flesh area with that middle tone. Usually it's a brown greenish color, mixture of color. Here since the flesh tones were much rosier than in the Byzantine tradition, this proplasmos, this base color, is a little bit lighter in tone, a little bit more rosy and a little bit more flesh-like. On this base color, then I've painted the facial features and the shadowy parts, and like the shadow below the nose, the shadowy parts of the neck, the mouth, the eyes, etc. After that, I've painted some lights on the face, and then my whole effort was to blend these lights to that base color and the shadows in a way that makes sense, in a way that creates some soft blending, and it gives the impression of the rosy, soft flesh of Virgin Mary. Now, I have to say that by doing this study all in eggtempera, I realized that I should probably have skipped to using oil at this point, after this stage, and after so many layers of adding eggtempera. I should have skipped to using oil because, as it seems, eggtempera cannot really hold too many layers one upon the other. I think that for this portrait so far, I've probably used more than in areas, in some areas especially, more than like say 20 layers, one upon the other. And after a point, eggtempera just, although it behaves beautifully and fantastically, and the control I had using eggtempera with my brush was truly amazing. After some point, the eggtempera layers couldn't support new layers on top of them, and things would become a little bit uncomfortable to paint. I don't think there will be any serious issues for the painting and to withstand in time, but as I said, I will do it in the next study. After a point of adding a layer upon layer of colors, I will skip to adding to change my medium and go to oil. So here I've used these flesh tones. For these tones I use colors like titanium white, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, cadmium red to create, to mix all these and create these fleshy rosy tones. Along you will see some colder colors. For those I've used some titanium white mixed with a little cobalt blue, with a little bit of black, and some yellow ochre. I don't have a specific recipe on painting, on mixing the colors and creating these colors. I just try to observe a lot my reference and try to understand what colors should I create on my palette, and what colors I should mix on my palette to create some effects. Now, as you see here, at this point, I have formed, let's say, the areas of light and shadow, and as you see, I go back and forth and to see where I should blend more, where I should soften things a little bit more, etc. My palette is a complete chaos at this point, because those of you who are familiar with using eggtempera, you know that eggtempera is we use a solution that is consisted by the yolk of the egg and some water, and with this solution we mix dry pigments to create our little puddles of color, and with those colors we paint. I use a lot of very thin puddles, let's say, of color. I use my colors at this point very thin to create this soft, fine blending of the color. And I have to say that this way of blending is not as probably as smooth as blending with oil, but it definitely, since it's a way of building the flesh tones with layer upon another layer, it really gives a very interesting, painterly and visually rich experience to paint and see. A very brief let me just briefly explain the difference between eggtempera and oil painting. When we paint on eggtempera, since this medium dries very quickly, tends to dry, it's a water soluble medium, and the hotter it is, if it is summer, it dries very quickly. Since it dries so quickly, we have to build the volume to do the blendings much quicker than when painting in oil, and using layers, as in Photoshop a little bit. You paint one layer, it dries, and then you proceed with painting a second layer, and complete the previous one, then use a third layer, and so on and so forth. When we paint in oil, the idea is different. In oil, we move the colors around, we mix and blend the colors around in a way that we can almost finish a portrait or a painting in one layer. If you mix them correctly and quickly, and if somebody is interested in this kind of painting, someone could finish a painting in one layer. Whereas when you have to paint in eggtempera, we have to use many layers, according of course to what's the goal. These Italian masters use a lot of layers to paint. I know, for example, that recent discoveries have found that Mona Lisa, for example, Da Vinci used egg yolk to some extent to paint Mona Lisa, and many Renaissance and Italian artists used eggs to paint their paintings. The thing is that in some cases you can actually mix oil with egg yolk, and in other cases you first begin painting what you need to paint with eggtempera, and then completely shift and change your painting medium and proceed with oil painting. So this is a great field for me to experiment and see and try to discover how these masters used egg and to what extent. Here on this painting that I've painted completely with eggtempera, I have discovered that you can't use too many layers of eggtempera one upon the other. Things will get a little bit messy and uncomfortable. So I would say that you can safely paint say 15 layers one upon the other. It's very satisfying, very rewarding. You can do some fine work with this, and but after say 15 or 20 maybe layers, things will get a little bit uncomfortable. I plan to experiment a little bit more on this technique and see if at some point I will shift and after which layer I will shift and paint with oils, but yeah. So now at this point you will see me adding some highlights, and then very quickly with a very swift brush stroke I will try to do some blendings. Like I will add a highlight, I will highlight some areas, and then I will go back a tone or two, and I will dip my brush into a very watery paint of color, something like glazing, and then with this little bit darker tone I will blend my previously applied highlight and try to smoothen things and make them more soft and rosy, fleshy. I have some experience on eggtempera. I paint with eggtempera since 1992. Since I was 14 years old, and I have to say that for me it's something that I feel I can control this medium. I can do pretty much whatever I want with this material. Whereas oil is still something that I feel I have to I have to say experiment with and try to unlock its features. It's very, of course, I do enjoy painting in oil. It's really nice, but I feel that I have to still unlock the properties of this medium, and this is something that is truly exciting for me. Now you see me doing these fine blendings. You see in many paintings that Italian paintings of Sfumato, that there is this fine smoke-like blending, and it's very hard for this blending to be accomplished with egg tempera. In oil, it's much more easy, but as I say, this when I try to do this blending in egg tempera, I get this very charming characteristic, very charming properties of painting that I really truly enjoy. I would strongly suggest you to do some of these studies, these experiments. They are very, very rewarding. You can, of course, really be speechless by the mastery of these old masters, and I just marvel on how they had accomplished, they had reached such a high level of mastery in their paintings, especially in a period where no photographs or, you know, the circumstances were completely different. So it's always something that amazes me and really leaves me speechless. So it's a great way for me to enjoy and relax a little bit. It's something that really is great for the stress or for any other, you know, uh, issues somebody might have. It is very creative. Of course, it's just a study, but if it feels creative, since it hones our skills, it makes us better in so many levels. Um, so I would strongly suggest you to experiment a little bit on these materials like egg tempera and do these studies and see how well you'll manage uh, to paint these and to learn something out of these. So, as I said, my palette is very chaotic at this point. Of course, I have to often wipe away the dry puddles of colors that I have on my glass, because as it is summer now, egg tempera dries very quickly. And then I will mostly at this point, as I said, use very watery, very um, pigments that I have had a lot of egg solution. And as you see, I go back and forth. I will sometimes you'll see me painting a shadow or do a very a glaze, a painting with very thin color on a shadow, and then you will see me go back and highlighting something else. At the same time, as I'm painting, I have to constantly be focused and constantly be in observation of my reference, try to really understand what I'm seeing, how dark something is, how rosy, how warm something feels, how cold something is. It's a process of deep concentration and of it's for me it's very very interesting because it keeps my mind in an alert, but in no case I can say that I am in this completely relaxed mode when I'm painting. It's a good sign when you're not relaxed when you're painting. It means that you're truly in observation mode, you're truly in comparing, let's say, mode. Here, for example, I was very much struggling to understand what's going on in the eyebrows, in the eyes. I did this little mistake here. And this is something that it truly requires some effort, some energy to try to understand what we are observing and trying to transfer this observation on our study, on our painting. Here with a little saliva, as this smear was still fresh, I made it disappear very quickly. As you see, little by little, this face really does come to an appearance. It does look nice enough. I'm really excited my next study to be on both egg tempera and oil. I know this might have been confusing for you, especially in the way that I try to explain things. I try my best, but the important is that you just, I would say, just print something that you like, or from painted from that era, from some master painter, and try to just play a little bit, try to enjoy having painted something and studying something by yourselves. This layer of here I am adding some shadows, very, as you see, very some very watery darker layers of color in some areas, and that really gives it some richness and some visual beauty. Try also to observe these transitions between, let's say, what's happening between the cheek and the neck. How is these dark lines that you see? There is a dark line on the around her cheek. How dark that line is, how blended this line is, how is it connected with the neck, and try to transfer this same observations on your study. To me, sometimes I'm thinking that schools of art have somehow failed to, or lately they don't give a lot of information on the techniques and how these of the paintings here were painted. At least when I was in the arts academy, the universities of arts, they really didn't pay much attention to the techniques, and that is truly a problem. I think it's a pity to have allowed these techniques to disappear. And now most of young painters have to rediscover and experiment just to find something that for the old masters was simple and easy. I'm pretty sure, for example, that when they painted the old masters, when they painted the mouths, they had some technique on the color. They had some recipes on how to paint the upper lip, how the lower lip. Instead, now, as you see, I just have to really observe and try to see how I would achieve a result that is similar to what I see, and not always as successful as I see it to be. or it's truly a pity. Okay, the basic experimentation of this study was about egg tempera and oil. I think it's somehow this failed here because I didn't use any oil at all. But it's truly a shame that we don't have the details on these recipes. How, of course, there was not just one recipe, or there is a range of techniques and what they did wasn't each painter changed his technique, I would say, but we have not much information about at which stage they started painting with oil, when they completely skipped egg tempera, and how they achieved these finest details in some paintings with just by using oil, etc. How many layers they painted when they painted just in oil, etc., etc. We have some idea, but this is all in theory. I haven't seen a painter demonstrating these techniques, and that's why to me it's very, very intriguing and interesting to work on this. I'm not that interested in unlocking, the exactly same colors as they used. I'm okay by using the contemporary colors and the contemporary materials, but I am interested in unlocking a little bit the process more than the materials, the process of painting, the usage of their brushes, the usage of layers or moving color around, and this. And the whole purpose of these studies, of understanding this, is just to apply these techniques and this knowledge on a work that would be not just a study anymore, but a more personal, more creative, let's say, than just painting, just painting a study. Now some highlights here. This will give this painting some beauty, some charm. I have to say that this result, even if it's painted just with egg tempera, it's pretty close to the original. Well, but it is charming enough, and I'm really happy to the outcome of this study. See how thin the color seems to be, and of course see that the brush that I've used is a Kolinsky brush, similar to one we use in iconography, a soft brush, very fine. It's not very harsh, otherwise egg tempera would be now completely destroyed. As I said, you can find the full video, of course, in slow motion on my Patreon account, and I would really like to thank all my supporters on Patreon for their financial support. It's really appreciated, and thank you all so very much. You will find there that video. At some point I will comment also in it. It's gonna be a 3.5 hour video, and I will have the process from the beginning till the finished one. So now little by little this study comes to its conclusion. Some final brush strokes on the hair. I have to say at this point I didn't pay so much attention to the hair. But yeah. So I hope you like this study. I hope you find something interesting in this video. And really thank you all so much for your support, for your comments. Yeah. Stay healthy, stay creative, be healthy. Yeah. Let me know in the comments what you think of this study, and feel free to ask any questions for the community. Thank you all so much for being here so far, and I will see you soon with another video. Have a nice creative week. Bye.